Astrology can be a powerful and a dark predictor. There have been cases where astrologers have been able to predict death with up to 85% accuracy, all of them narrated by close relatives. Whether you deem astrology to be true or not, you need to listen to this story. So this happened a while back where I was with one of my friends who is an astrologer, although he doesn't declare that publicly, but he's an astrologer. And by the way, his secret is out. But he's an astrologer, and he tells me this story about astrology. And at that time, I was a very skeptic about astrology. And he tells me the story about one of his uncles, and he said that uh, his uncle that he was talking about, he said that my uncle lived a very kind of a secluded life. He was a very different kind of person. You have those kind of people who are not able to fit into the society and fit in even with their family in the proper way. I'm sure that you must have experienced that to some extent. Now, this guy, he was a journalist, and he worked in the night, and basically he because at that time the way the newspaper functioned, at that time they didn't have electronic media and stuff like that. So journalism was all about we have to get the papers ready before the morning. So he was a journalist, and he wrote about he worked in the newspaper agency, and he wrote things like that. So when he died, by the way, he said that he lived in this kind of an apartment somewhere, and we were there. I was there. My friend said that he was there uh, with one of his relative, and they were like cleaning up his stuff. And as they were cleaning up his stuff, he found an astrological chart that some astrologer made probably about 30 to 40 years ago. And at that time, the time of his death was mentioned somewhat like 12:05 in the morning. And he said that the exact time my uncle died was 12:05 in the morning, and the exact date that was mentioned, because I was there with him. And I was like, holy what? Like, that is scary, I mean, if astrology is able to predict death. I mean, I was also reading this story by a Quora user where, an astrologer said to one of this guy, and the story was also narrated by a close relative, and they said that the astrologer told my uncle to avoid water and cars. So he did that a lot of the time, but the way my uncle died was being strung. He was being stuck to his seat while his car drowned. That is scary. And these are stories like this where you really question whether things like astrology and disciplines of this sort, where they are like, are they just fluffs, and you just hit that kind of fluff and sometime it lands on the mark, or maybe do they have some real science to it? Now, by the way, this doesn't mean that you should start believing in astrology 100%, because we cannot actually say a prediction to be true 100%, even if we are calculating it with something like statistics, for example, right? We cannot say that this prediction is 100% true, but we can get closer to reality, and who knows that there might be a kernel of truth in the prediction that astrology makes. So this is why we should not discard it completely and also not accept it completely as well. So I have been really interested in astrology for a long time. I've not learned it to a point where I'm not a professional astrologer. I'm not even an astrologer in that sense. I have a few understanding of how astrology relates to certain things and how astrology kind of affects the whole space-time continuum. But I have one of my friend. This friend, he's a really close friend of mine, and he will be on the podcast as well. I hope soon. I'm convincing him to be on the podcast, so he will be there. But actually, I have picked his brain on what astrology is, and I love picking his brain as well, and we'll do that in the podcast as well. But the concept that he talks about when he says that astrology is, and he thinks this is his theory, and he says I'm not able to prove it right now, but I think he says that I have a high kind of a doubt. It's like I have a high suspicion that astrology may be in some ancient civilization. There's basically the point when we are talking about history, there's a point where we say that, okay, civilization started from here, right? Like human civilization started. But there are also we also see remains of some civilizations that existed before when we start calculating the human history, right? These are civilizations. But the thing is, they're remains, right? We don't have that sort of a proper verified historical account, but we can't actually discard it completely as well, right? It's one of those things that is hard to verify. So he says that maybe there was some kind of, maybe it was an alien civilization, maybe it was some different kind of civilization that existed before us, and it was more technologically advanced than we are at this time. And maybe they had a complete scientific explanation of how the planets, being this big heavenly bodies, and they have weight and they have mass, and they having mass, they also have gravity, how they affect certain areas of our life, right? How they affect certain different aspects of our life, if you will. So he says that maybe it's that, but the thing is, he said maybe that civilization got destroyed as a result, right? This is his theory, that there was some civilization and it got destroyed, and but they preserved the knowledge of astrology, and as a result, what we have, he says that they taught the knowledge of astrology to humans in a way where they don't know about the science behind it, but they know the simple basic connections of it. It's exactly like, let's say, if I taught you to make copper sulfate, I tell you, do this and do this, you'll get copper sulfate, that's blue. But I don't tell you the actual chemical equations, the actual chemical process that is happening behind the whole thing. So you don't get that understanding, but you know how to make copper sulfate because I told you do these steps, right? It's like if it's exactly that way. And he says that I think, I have a high suspicion. He's not been able to prove this theory yet, but he says that I have a high suspicion that maybe astrology was something like this. Now, I've also picked his brain in like how prediction in astrology are made, and he says that prediction are in astrology are, and he doesn't think of astrology as this woo-woo, ancient magical thing. He thinks that it's just like, it's just like when you it's just like making predictions. It's just like making deductions, right? There's certain things like, let's say that let's say that there's a stream of water downhill, and you collect water from it, right? And I love this example that he gave me. It's his example. He says that you collect water from downhill, and what happens after a few times, you're collecting water. You have a village there, and you're actually drinking water, and everything else is happening there, and everything else is going fine until one day you collect water and it tastes different, and you drink it, and you get sick, or somebody gets sick who drinks that water. And as a result, if you're a scientist, you take that water and you measure, and you say, okay, oh, the mercury levels of this water are up. There's more mercury in this water. And you're thinking like, why is there mercury in water? How the hell does it get there? And the deduction that you make is, oh, okay, so I just heard that there was a paper factory that was built upstream somewhere, right? And they didn't tell me this, but I'm very sure that when you're trying to make paper, this white paper that you make, I don't have one near me, but when you make white paper, in order to clean that out, right, you need to use mercury as a cleaning agent. And when you clean that from, you chop wood, you press it, it becomes a pulp. And if you need to clean that, you use mercury. And all the waste mercury, the factory is throwing it in the water, and it's coming downstream, and that is where the mercury is coming from. Now, the entire thing about the factory, right, even if you didn't know that the factory existed, to a very good extent, you might have been able to come up with the theory that, okay, there's a factory who is throwing mercury in the water, or somebody is throwing mercury in the water, right? And when you think a little bit deeper on this, and when you think a little bit more logically on this, you would say, okay, why would somebody throw mercury in the water? Okay, factory doing paper production, mercury waste product in the water coming to us downstream. He says astrology is exactly this way, that you see the positions of the planet, you see not the planets actually, you see the positions of the constellations of the star, and based on that you make certain predictions on how those constellations affect you on Earth, right? Now again, we don't know, according to him, I'm building up his hypothesis, that according to him, we don't know why do they affect us, what's the reason behind it. One of the reason that he gives, which is a bit of a scientific reason, is that it has to do with the basic building blocks of our reality. Scientists, physicists, the thing that all of us all of modern physics and modern science is about trying to find the very core of where our thing is built from, our universe is built from, reality is built from. And one of the very good components of that is string theory, and one of the a very good competitor of that theory, both of them are not being proven. Both we don't have the kind of observation to prove them right now, but one of them says that reality is built out of these smaller tetrahedrons, and they're actually in a different dimension. They're not the shape is not actually a tetrahedron, it's in a different dimension. But when we project that shape into the third dimension, we get a tetrahedron. So reality is like this combination of small tetrahedrons. I'm not making the Illuminati signs, guys, please, this is not that. So but this is the tetrahedrons, right? And it's like these tetrahedrons, they combine in different, and the combination of that makes up reality. And gravity can affect these tetrahedrons. So let's say there's a big planet and it shifts in some way, and there's stars as well, and we know that gravity affects these tetrahedrons. But when one thing changes, it creates a kind of effect, and that effect is also translated to the space-time fabric, and it also translates. I know it's a very far out theory. I'm just putting it out. It's not like I agree with it. I'm just taking it. I think, by the way, this is a really good discussion about a good scientific or a good attitude of a truth seeker is to be an open-minded skeptic. You should be open-minded about things like, okay, now this theory, I'm open-minded about it, because right now I cannot discard it, I cannot accept it. But I'm also a skeptic, which means that I'm not accepting it, I'm not discarding it either. The not discarding its part is me being open-minded. Me not accepting it is me being a skeptic. And until I see some solid evidence, until I see some real bold claims which are made to be true, I'm not going to accept this theory, right? But I'm open to the idea that this might be it, right? So that's how it goes. Now, saying this about astrology and death, and now relating astrology to that, and how there are also certain other stories. I'll also add some of these stories in the. You'll be able to see them somewhere in this video or somewhere in the link down below. But there were stories of astrology predicting death, and that is a serious thing. I mean, imagine you make an astrological chart of yourself, and you're able to predict your death, and like the astrologer tells you when you're gonna die. That is dark. That is scary. I mean, I don't want to know that because what's the fun, right? What's the fun of living life if you know when you're gonna die, when you're gonna leave? It's like the fun of living life for me. At least me, the fun of living life is the uncertainty of it, right? So that is dark. And when I was talking to this person, I was talking to my friend about, like, what about personal predictions? The thing is, he avoids personal predictions of any sort. He doesn't make that. This is the exact reason he doesn't tell people about publicly about his astrological things. And I think I'm gonna have to take his permission before uploading this video. So if you're watching this video, consider yourself lucky, because the guy agreed. So so with that said, I think the reason that he doesn't make, and I think this is also the dark part of astrology is, let's say you come to me, let's imagine I'm an astrologer, you come to me and I'm making a prediction about who you're going to marry, or I make a prediction about where you'll find your soulmate, or I make a scary prediction about when you're going to die, or whether you're going to get involved in an accident or something, right? And I make that prediction, two things will happen. The first one is, I would feel a burden of responsibility on myself. Because if you're doing these kind of things, you have to have like a big heart. I mean, you're telling someone that you're going to get involved in an accident. That is, I don't want to tell someone that. Even if I knew, I would do something to, like, I would tell you to avoid it. I would tell you that, okay, this is going to happen. Please do your best to avoid it. But the other thing is, that is, one thing is you feel that burden of responsibility. And this is true of all these predictive subjects like palmistry, astrology, and even to some extent tarot cards as well. I've seen people who read who do tarot card readings and stuff like that, and nothing wrong about that. It's perfectly cool, perfectly good. It's just the problem is, this is what happens with a lot of the people who are subject to these kind of things. They are not mature enough to take that in. And what I mean by that is, one of the things that happens is, when you tell someone that this is going to happen, let's say there's a chance that it doesn't happen, but there's a thing called the placebo effect, right? And the placebo effect is from the medicine world, and it's like the placebo effect is when they do a study. They do one of a control group and one of a different group, and in the control group they tell you that, okay, this is done actually to compare studies, right? They give you a placebo to compare the results. And in one of the group, let's say you have a severe headache, a migraine, and they'll give you this new drug, and they would say, okay, they'll tell you good stories about it, and they'll say this drug is actually going to heal you, and this will happen. And in the other group, they do exactly the same in studies. They say, oh, this drug is going to heal you, this will happen, this is such a good drug. But instead of giving you the actual drug, what they would give you is a sugar pill. It's like a scam, right? It's a sugar pill. It's not even so. But what we began to notice is that even the people who were given sugar pills, their headaches began to heal. There's this story of I forget the exact name, but there was this story of a cancer patient he had tumors growing around his shoulders, basically, and tumors this big, and the doctor told him that you have a week to live at best. But there was a new drug. I forget the name of the drug actually, but there was a new drug that was coming up, and the doctor said, okay, we might try this drug, and the trials are coming in really nice, and they showed him the result and stuff like that happened. And guess what? They tried the drug on him, and within a day his tumors completely melted, right? And the drug was not even tested to be that well, right? And the tumors melted, the guy's fine, he goes off, they discharge him from the hospital. What happens is, after a while, there's news on the television about that drug, and they're saying that this drug was not that good. It was just something that the trials were wrong and stuff like that, and they do stuff like this. And guess what? The guy listens to that, and his brain goes into a different direction, and his tumors start building up again. So it actually happened, and the guy gets admitted to the hospital once again, and the doctor now realizes that what is happening. And now his doctor makes up another kind of fake studies and stuff like that. And he says, no, the news are wrong. They don't know. They look at this and look at this thing or look at this thing, this study and this study. It's actually real. And the guy's tumor go back again. It's like they melt. And the guy's fine, goes back to the home. But now this time, the news actually busted the drug for real, and they said, okay, this is not going to work. And they gave like solid evidences and proof of it on the news. And this time the guy couldn't survive. So think about that. Think about the power of placebo effect, and translate that to stuff like astrology, palmistry, and stuff like this, where you tell someone, and by the way, it happens both in, as you've seen in this example, it happens both in the positive aspect, but also in the negative aspect. And if I tell you, and if I show you, okay, astrology is saying, and if you are someone who totally believes in astrology, you might create that for yourself, right? You might, because you have that, it's like our brain has a system, it's called the reticular activating system. It's called the RAS. The RAS tells you what to focus on and what not to focus on. And you might have experienced this, that you get a new phone and you get a new dress, and you suddenly see that dress everywhere. You get a new car and you suddenly see that car everywhere. And what does that mean? Like, is something magical happening? You buy the car and everybody else is buy the car as well? No, the car was still there, but now because you bought it, your brain, your reticular activating system, your RAS tells you, okay, this is important, focus on it, right? And you start to see more of that dress, more of that car, every single where on the street. So this can actually happen. I think this is what I feel, that that astrology, tarot, stuff like this, they can create really powerful placebos. And this is why, if you're taking them, you should take them with a pinch of salt, right? If you're someone who is interested in them, you should take them with a pinch of salt, right? You should take these predictions with a pinch of salt. And now, I don't do, by the way, no astrological readings here. We are just open enough to see if astrology would become a subject, a scientific subject matter in the future. We are open enough to that. The last part I want to talk about is the difference. I think what's stopping astrology and stuff like this, because there are, as you have seen, cases where their predictions are actually true. And let's say Einstein also made his predictions about light and gravity and the space-time fabric, and his predictions were actually true. But what makes Einstein theory of space-time as fabric, space-time fabric, a scientific theory, and what makes an astrological reading not like a scientific prediction of that sort? And I think the difference is what we call falsifiability, right? It's what we call bold versus there are two differences. The first one is falsifiable, the second one is bold versus vague predictions. Now a lot of these things that happens with, I'm going to be real honest, a lot of these things that when you see in astrological readings or stuff like palmistry, most of the I think a lot of the people who are practicing it, they give you predictions that are kind of vague, right? I mean, you can apply them to nearly every person, or you can bend them to apply them to nearly every person, right? Now, science doesn't work that way. Let's say if Einstein say, "Oh, I think space-time fabric is this way, and I think the gravity bends space-time fabric," but oh, maybe in some cases it doesn't, right? Science doesn't allow that. If Einstein said that, Einstein would not have been the scientist that we think of. Einstein made such a bold prediction that, and by the way, in 1919, we tested his prediction, and the way we did that is his prediction was totally bold. His prediction was, okay, space-time fabric is this sheet, and gravity bends space-time fabrics, and if the space-time fabrics bend, then light must also bend. So gravity must bend light. And so in the 1919, when the solar eclipse happened, we studied that, and if light didn't bend, Einstein would have been proven wrong. All of his theory would have been gone. It's wrong, right? Because the observational setting don't actually equate to the theoretical model that Einstein built. But it actually didn't happen. So Einstein theory, in that sense, was bold, right? It was not like a vague prediction. It was a bold prediction. It was like very testable. And the second thing is, it was also falsifiable. You could falsify it, right? There are examples of statements which you cannot falsify. For example, if I say that, the reason I'm not able to do this thing is because I don't have enough money, right? I don't have enough funds, right? The reason I'm not able to fly without having any equipment is because I don't have any funds. That's not a falsifiable statement, because if I am able to fly without any equipment on me, I would say that, okay, I'm true. But if I'm not able to do that, I would say that, okay, I don't have enough funds. And I could keep saying that. So I cannot falsify this. If you say a statement like all ducks are white, right? That's a statement that you can falsify. At least theoretically, you can falsify it, right? But there are certain statements, like when we come to vague statements, these are statements that we can't even falsify sometimes. And even in our mental experiment or a thought experiment, we cannot falsify it. So that is a problem. So if astrology becomes a science, in some like an objective science, actually, that people, it would have to be more, I think it would have to be more bold. I think it would have to make predictions that are more falsifiable, and I think would have to have a theory and an understanding of how these things happen. Now, with that said, if you want to learn more about truth seeking, and I hope that if you're watching this channel, you are a truth seeker, so welcome to TruthQuest. If you want to learn more about truth seeking, I have a free ebook that will tell you the 6 principles to lead a truthful life. And you can get that for absolutely free in the description below. You go get that ebook and read that and let me know what your thoughts are. Now, with that said, disclaimer is, before I leave you, we don't do astrological readings. But I am interested in it. I know people like Carl Jung were interested in it, and that really got my interest. I am open to it becoming a discipline that we can study, it becoming at least a scientific discipline, or at least the possibility of it becoming not even, I won't even attach the label of science to it, but even I would say that just basically a discipline that we can study, and we can basically make more solid in its foundation, right? If you have any questions, or if you have your thoughts, if you have any questions that you would like to answer, comment them down below. I would love to answer your questions. And if you have any thoughts about this podcast, this video, make sure to comment them down below. I would read them, and I would love to reply to you. Till that said, Adios. If you have enjoyed watching this video, don't forget to watch this video on my side. It also relates to physics, philosophy, and personal development. And also, don't forget to subscribe. Continue seeking truth and become a truth seeker.